Hello, brothers and sisters of the Briar. Professor Jeremiah here. And this is Dash. I'll hold him up because he's tucked down here. There you wave, Dash. He's going to grunt for you. Hello, brothers and sisters of the Briar. Professor Jeremiah here. This is just an incredible smoke. I could almost sit here and just ignore the fact that I'm videoing. I label this the State of the Pipe address. I always keep record of new blends that I smoke, as well as even keeping a daily record of how many bowls I've smoked for the day. Now, the number of bowls that I smoked for a day would have to be for a closed session meeting. That's a matter of state security. So I can't reveal that number, but I will say that I was surprised to find that I had tried 22 new blends this year. I'm smoking in this Bjarne, a blend which has become really one of my more favorite blends for the year, and that's Cery Grant. And Cery Grant's really this kind of English arrow mixture. It has some Irish aromatics mixed in with the English blend, and just a nice kind of English but yet sweet smoke. I think that's what I'm going to dedicate to this pipe. This pipe, this is my first time smoking it, and this was just an incredible find, and really one of those eBay stories that's too good to be true. This is a Bjarne Nielsen signature H grade. Now I'm not sure exactly how he graded his pipes, but not all of his pipes have a grade on them. So this is a H grade signature. My other Bjarne is a B grade. And my first thought is if this smoked just half as good as the B grade, that'd be incredible. And it really smokes just about as good. I paid a little over $50 for this pipe. And this pipe, it's new old stock. Bjarne died in, I believe, 2008. I've seen other Bjarne grade pipes with the bamboo stem selling for around $700. This is an incredible still. So very thankful to have it, and an impressive smoke. It is getting a little hot on the bowl, so I will have to be a little careful with that. I don't know, maybe it is just the blend. Maybe the draw is so easy that I'm just like heating it up more than I normally would. Last Tuesday I'd been out of town. When I came home, I found the yard partly dug up. The road was dug up in front of the house. They had barricades around it. And a part of me was happy because it meant that the gas company had finally decided that they would fix the leak on the main outside of the house. And it's been leaking since before I moved into this house. And it seems to be mostly a seasonal thing. It seems to mostly do it when the cold weather really hits. And I never really smelt it that much during the summertime, but now that it's picked back up to the winter, I was smelling it again. And I found from a retired gas company man that is something that's been going on in this area for years on this street. But my story is not so much about that as it is at one point one of the men had a gas sniffer in his hand. And I'm sure it's not the same model or design, but it took me back to my childhood. As many of you, when I was growing up in my parents' neighborhood, my first job was just being a yard boy, going out and raking people's leaves, getting a few dollars here and there for that. When I got old enough, I first borrowed my parents' lawnmower. My mom said that I could use that for a few months, but as soon as I could afford to buy my own, I had to buy my own mower. So a few months later, I had saved up money, bought my own mower. But in those early days, all the yards that I went to, I could roll my lawnmower to the yards. And that always was great for picking up other jobs. People would stop me and call me over to their house and get me to cut their yard too. And I got pretty picky, really, in some ways, that I had pretty much got to where I was only cutting grass maybe 4 days a week, and I would normally just cut 1 or 2 yards in the morning and 1 yard in the afternoon, and pretty much had the rest of the day. But in cutting yards in my parents' neighborhood, I met a lot of interesting people. And one of those men one day who called me over to his house as I'm rolling my mower past his house on my way back to my parents'. First, he asked me who I was, asked me if I'd be interested in cutting his yard, had me take a look at it and give him a price. I think I told him $15 because he just told me I would cut the backyard maybe every 3 weeks or so. So that was going to be an additional $10 for the backyard. But anyway, that was the prices back then. This would have been the 80s. But as soon as he found out my last name, he's like, "Oh, is your grandmother?" And I said, "Yes." And he's like, "Oh, she's a beautiful woman." About that time, his wife came walking out. And so I came to find that he had known my grandparents. My grandfather had passed away before I was born. But hanging on this man's living room wall was a bronze gas sniffer. And I didn't know what it was at first. And he saw my eyes kind of looking at this bizarre, instrument hanging on their living room wall. And so he had me come and take a look at it. And he told me, he said that he was an inventor and that he had invented this gas sniffer. And his wife had told him when he was spending all this time in his basement working on it, developing it, she had told him that thing will never sell. And she said, if you make any money from that, we'll bronze one and hang it on the living room wall. So there it hung on the living room wall. I forget, he invented a few other things, but the thing that sticks out in my mind the most, other than the gas sniffer, is he was the man who developed the touch-tone phone for Bell South. And so he took me down into his basement one time and showed me the touch-tone system, how he had developed it, and he had all kind of stuff laid all over the place. And at this time, he was in his late 70s. Well, 2 doors down from him, another man whose yard I ended up cutting, he was the man who developed the car wash where you drive your car in and you set the dial and you brush it yourself. You have the pressure washer and spray it down. He was a real interesting character too. His name was Mr. Mapes. And Mr. Mapes, he ended up running for public office one time, running for city councilman. He lost, but he had told me a lot of his story because he had me go out and pass out flyers for him when he was running for the councilman position. And I was supposed to know a little of his history to be able to tell people about him. So these were great men. They would tell you all kind of stories, and kind of just from the World War II generation. On up the road from them was a man whom my grandparents had known. My parents came to know him, and this was when I was really too young to even be cutting yards. I would go up to his house and I would walk with him. He had had a heart attack and his wife wanted somebody to walk with him just so if he was to have a problem while he was walking, I could come back and tell her or run to and get another neighbor to help out. And it ended up over time, he was a pilot for a B 17 bomber during the war. So I got a few neat stories. I'm sure there was many stories he didn't tell, but a lot of neat stories with that. On the block around from us, one day I was at a garage sale, and there was a model airplane that this man was selling at the garage sale. He had some boxes, a few boxes of the same plane, and they were a plane that I'd seen many times at the toy store. I'd seen the model, and I would just think, I didn't even know if that was a real plane. And it was, I don't remember the numbers for it, but it was a Black Widow from World War II, had a turret gun on the back of it. And as I talked to this man, I came to find out that he was a pilot for the Black Widow during World War II. And I don't think they made very many of those at all. So to meet a pilot for this plane was pretty rare. And he showed me a picture of that. But, you know, the lesson I learned with that, one is being a young person. Today, I have a lot of stories to tell, but very few young people ever sit still long enough or have the interest to hear the stories that I have to tell. You know, growing up, I always wanted to be an adventurer, so I would have stories to tell and share with other people. But there's, of all the people who I've really been around, there's only one man who I know that when I've been over at his family's house to eat, he won't even call his children over or anything. Maybe he and I have been out eating lunch or something, and I'll come back to his house that afternoon, and his children just start gathering around you, wanting to hear stories, and they'll ask good questions. And sometimes it's embarrassing in the fact that there are other families who he's connected with and I'm connected with, but those children don't have any interest in the stories of what I've done overseas and what I'm doing now, versus this man's children would ask very intelligent questions. But, you know, so many children today have no interest in that. And oftentimes we ourselves don't really have interest in taking time to get to know those who live around us. So I'll say, you have to wonder what are the gems and treasures of people that are around you. Even as I shared about the car wash deal, it reminds me that my mom ended up helping an elderly lady in the area. And it turned out that her husband was the man who came up with the automated car wash. So all of these people in Birmingham, Alabama, and all in just the same little area together. But you have to wonder what kind of inventors are out there, what experienced war vets are around you. Growing up, I only played 1 year of football in school. That's because my mom and my brother basically bribed me. They paid me both $50 each, so I was like a professional player. But the main reason why I was interested, though, to play was because the coach was an old World War II vet. He was already of some age when he even entered into the war. First came in right as they were leaving North Africa. So he was in all through Italy and ended up going through the whole campaign in Europe. But he was on a Thompson machine gun. This is the belt-fed, water-cooled machine gun. And interesting enough, all he carried was the tripod. That was his main job, was just to carry the tripod. So if I remember correctly, and somewhere I have an old audio tape that I recorded of him when I was in middle school. I had had a special project, and I had recorded him telling some of his story. And it was real interesting. And if I can find that recording, I'll even put it up on YouTube at some point for people who would be curious to hear it. No, tell them what my voice sounded like then. But in football, he would start describing a play and drawing out the play on the chalkboard, and suddenly he would say, "And the Nazis!" And before we knew it, we were back in World War II, and the X was a Nazi soldier up in a window, and the O was him and his buddies with their tripod and with the machine gun, and it would get pretty animated as far as him talking about the war. A lot of people there probably weren't interested. My buddy and I, we both were glued to his story, and a part of me, I really didn't care about football. That'll be my confession, I guess. But I just wanted to hear the war stories. But a lot of interesting characters in this life, and you never really know who you're going to meet, what their experiences have been. I feel like sometimes today we don't spend enough time just stopping to listen to those around us and to their experiences. Well, brothers and sisters, I'm going to enjoy the rest of this bowl. I think I need to tamp it down some more. Hope you have a blessed evening.